All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm Paige Walters. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Economic Development for the Springfield Chamber of Commerce, and you are at our Small Business Solutions Hub program. So we hold these programs quarterly, but we also have a digital webpage for you to connect with small business resources and resource providers throughout the year, ask questions, make connections. We really wanted to build this as a way to bridge technical and business education needs for our small business community, who are most of our chamber members, and our resource partners, and professional development opportunities to help your business grow and thrive. So I want to recognize the sponsors of the program in the room today. So we've got Ask Eric IT and Computer Services. Eric, can you wave your hand? So I just want to give a special shout out to Eric just because of the topic we're here to talk about today. Eric specializes in some of this information, so you've got some information on your tables if you want to connect with him afterwards. He offers email spam protection and IT security services, so please give him a ring if you want to talk more after the program. I've got Belfour Property Restoration, Chambers Construction, Debbie in the room, thank you Debbie, Eugene Area Radio Station, or EARS. You guys have advertising needs. We have Hirschner Hunter Attorneys, who have provided some great legal programming for our members over the last couple of years as well. Oregon Community Credit Union and WaFd Bank. I saw Scott in the room. If you want to talk to Scott. And a big thank you to our title sponsor, Kaiser Permanente, for supporting this program since its inception a couple of years ago. You guys have been huge supporters of the Small Business Solutions Hub and our chamber community. And here to say a couple of words on behalf of Kaiser is Colleen, Lawson.
Really, I just want to say thank you, for being here in the room, and those of you who have logged in. We have so much great work that the chambers are doing to support the growth of small businesses. It's really the backbone of the economy in the state of Oregon. And so, of course, as a healthcare provider, you're wondering, well, why are we sponsoring something like this? But really, in order to have a thriving community, you've got to have healthy, thriving employees. And that means you have access to care, access to affordable and high quality care. And one of the reasons that we came to Eugene is because there has been a shortage of primary care access down here for a long time. So for us, we're really growing our primary care. Our network is part of the community in terms of our specialty care and Peace Health hospital systems. So we have this hybrid. So we've got the Kaiser Permanente model of integrated care along with the partners that you know and trust here in town. And we are growing our primary care. So we have, we'll have 8 by the fall. And right now we have 6 or 7 primary care providers. They're all taking new members. As we're hearing in the community, that's difficult. Or you find that your primary care provider, you get a notification that they're moving on and you're automatically assigned to somebody else. And, you know, it's been really challenging. COVID put a real monkey wrench into everything for all of us. But as business owners, as you're growing and thinking about how I attract or retain employees, healthcare is a big part of it. So if you guys have any questions or any interest in learning about Kaiser Permanente, I host tours at our medical office, and I'm happy to talk to any of you and your brokers. And we have a phenomenal agency in town, USI, who will be speaking with us today. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the time.
Colleen, so you might have heard the Zoom tell you a little bit earlier, but this meeting is being recorded. We post these programs on our Small Business Solutions Hub webpage, so go check it out. Once we get that up online, you can always watch this back or share it out, refer back to it if you had questions. But today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity for small businesses. This is a really big topic, and it's something I think that if you've had something happen to you or your business, you don't always want to talk about it. So we wanted to provide some information to you so that as small business owners, you're not finding out what to do once something has happened. So we've got a couple of really great speakers here today to talk about things to do to prevent attacks, and then what do you do afterwards if the worst should happen. So we're joined first by Charles LaBorn. Charles is the President and Chief Technology Officer of Permanente Solutions, which is a local tech company. Prior to becoming president, he spent 6 years as the Chief Technology Officer and 5 years as a developer, leveraging his technical expertise to drive innovation. But more importantly, before his tech career, Charles spent 10 years in the Army as a paratrooper, honing his leadership skills and commitment to excellence. So Charles comes to us with a wealth of experience. He also serves on our board of directors. Really grateful to have you as part of the Springfield Chamber. So please help me welcome Charles.
Well, thank you, Paige. Again, my name is Charles LaBorn, President of Permanente Solutions IT. We're a local IT managed service provider. We operate up and down the I-5 corridor. So today I kind of want to talk about just some high-level concepts and ideas based around cybersecurity, protecting your business, and also if I'm not speaking loud enough, let me know. I'll ratchet up a little bit. All right, so at its basic, cybersecurity is just protecting your digital assets. Be that through, I mean, it's not just through cyber attacks themselves, though. Some of the vectors that you can run into is people using physical means to then gain access to your digital content. So don't just think it's only your computer systems themselves. That's what they're after, but they'll use other means to get there. Phone calls is a pretty common one. A lot of people want to volunteer information when they're just on the phone. So it's a really easy way to take advantage of people's generosity and just good-natured aspects. Right now, cyber attack themselves, it's been on an exponential rise over the years. You've probably all heard about different businesses being hit with ransomware or crypto viruses. That's a pretty big thing that's been in the news, and it's pretty devastating for a business, especially if you don't have good backups. Because at least with a good backup, you can restore to it from it. And depending on what you have in place, you can end up with a pretty long time to recover from, if at all. If you don't have a plan for how to address being a victim of a cyber attack, you're on the back foot when it comes to recovering from it. And some businesses don't recover from it. And so it's very important that you do look into this, identify it, and have a plan that you put in place. So as I was talking about just a few minutes ago, I wanted to cover some of the high level stuff, just to give you that information so that you know where to start from. I'm not laying out the exact, this is going to work for you, but it'll get you on the path. All right, so understanding a risk assessment. One of your first steps that you're going to have is doing a risk assessment of your business, right? Part of that is identifying what are your key systems or components that you have. Like, what is the core of your business? What allows you to operate as a business? You need to have an inventory of that equipment. Can you even get, let's say something happens to that and you need to replace it. Can you? Do you have a way? Is it an older, let's say, proprietary system from a business that no longer operates? Where would you even start to get that? And if you haven't asked that question, you're kind of setting yourself up for a little bit of hurt if something happens. So part of that is just looking at all those different things that you have as you operate as a business. Identifying how big of an impact it would have on you. You might have certain key employees, for instance, that it's imperative to get them up and operating right away. But some, let's say a larger percentage of your staff, okay, I can wait to get them up and going, because until these core individuals are back on their feet, this is just noise, right? And most people, I don't think, from my interactions, have really sat down and thought about that. Like, who do I get back up? And sometimes it's not even certain, I mean, maybe they don't like to hear this, but sometimes it's not even some of your executive staff, right? You might have key management that is core to your business operations and keeping things running that you need to get up and going first. And so it's really important to identify these things, these systems, so that you can plan for that, right? It also allows you to proactively put things in place like, okay, we're planning to do this migration, or we want to move to the cloud for all of our stuff. Well, if you know what your core stuff is, it makes that process easier, and you can plan for those items later, and actually have some kind of security plan in place for those beforehand. You should already, but whoever vendor you're working with or your own internal IT should do that for you. But as with anything, trust but verify, right? Trust the people you're working with, but verify that they're doing the right thing. Okay, so these are some of the, when we're talking about network, and this is just your actual computer network. When we're talking about some of the core things, are all of you familiar with the concept of the firewall on your network? Okay, how about the IDS or IPS? Okay, so an IDS or IPS, in this case, these are looking for intrusion into your network, and either, well, a combination of it, but you're going to be trying to prevent those, which is the IPS part. And these are automated systems, and some of these will have more advanced features in them now, like AI stuff in there, or other machine learning programs into them. And some of them don't, but all in all, as with anything with your network, it's kind of like a layered approach. You're always going to be stacking different things that you're protecting for different vectors that can come in. And this is really one of your first lines is your firewall, to keep people out. It's the front door to your network. Now it gets a little bit more nebulous now with a lot of us being hybrid or in the cloud. And so now we're relying on, do you even have a network in your office, or are you doing, is all your stuff cloud-based? And then you're relying on third-party vendors, and you're hoping that they have stuff in place that can protect you, and that you have access to it to where you can see these things, or your staff can, in a way that is beneficial for you. VPNs are important as well, especially if you have remote staff. You want to keep as much as you can encrypted. The VPN is going to do that for you when you're doing your communication. This isn't not as big of a deal these days as it used to. I mean, the VPN is, but as far as stuff being encrypted, by default, there's been such a heavy push in the industry. You've all probably experienced, it's probably about 8 years ago now, when all the browsers started just forcing HTTPS, which is HTTP secure, right? That's what the S is for. So there's a lot of core components that go into your network, firewall being, in my opinion, the most critical, especially if you just have a local network. And we can get into other things that go into this as well, like you're going to have stuff for tracking the logs that this kind of stuff is going to detect, so that you can use other tools that are available to detect patterns that have happened over a shorter or larger time frame, and help you realize that there is a problem or not. Best practices, so stay up to date on all your patching for your systems. That's the first one. I mean, this is a very easy one to point out that people don't like doing. It can be inconvenient to restart your computer to have those patches apply, or a really easy one. People get very annoyed by, let's say, Chrome, the web browser, and it's just sitting up there like, oh, there's an update. Oh, I just updated, yesterday, right? But as of maybe, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, Chrome put out 4 patches that required pretty quick updates, because they had what's called a zero-day exploit that they had to push out and patch. And these were pretty bad ones too. These were remote code exploits that they patched. So if someone you go to the wrong page, they could execute something on your computer to use that to gain access. And so it's not always just like they're just trying to add something to track you. It's there's actually security reasons to make sure you're doing these, even if it is kind of inconvenient. Strong passwords, I like this one. Strong password doesn't mean you have to use random letters and characters. You can use a passphrase. Length is usually the most important thing when it comes to passwords. The longer it is, the harder it's going to be for them to crack. We're also starting to get into pass keys, which kind of removes the need for the password itself. And for people that are familiar with private key encryption, it kind of is into that space. And it allows you to just kind of sign something with a certificate that you have. They have another version of it on their end that they can use to then confirm that you're the one that signed it, and then they can allow access. Again, that's a pretty new thing that's getting pushed, so I think it's probably a more secure route to go, but you're going to end up with a system where you'd be using that and passwords, because not everywhere supports it right now. I highly recommend some type of password vault or password safe. It's a lot easier to have a bunch of unique passwords that you store inside of a system designed to store those securely, so that you can have one strong master password that you can get into. It also limits the vectors of, if an account gets compromised, you don't have to worry about going to all these different accounts and changing passwords, or a password that you might have shared that you shouldn't have. And then network segmentation, I think that's a good term to know. You might also hear it referred to as something like a VLAN, virtual local area network. It's good to segment certain devices on your, so if you have VoIP phones on your network, I would recommend having those VLANs off. They're segmented from your network. Different Internet of Things, IoT devices. It's a little bit more management for any of your IT, but it makes it a lot more secure. And if I'm going through this a little quick, by all means, ask questions if it comes up. I'm happy to, but we will have some time at the end as well. So the biggest thing with the successful implementations and lessons from breaches, the ones that I've ran into, the common factor with the breaches is weak passwords. There was passwords that were shared, and so when unfortunately someone got compromised through an email, they got this password, and then they were able to move laterally inside their network. So they were able to get into other systems, and at that point, it can be kind of challenging to ferret that out, because you just have to look at everything. So it can get a little complicated. Ooh. This is also, if not the worst vulnerability, so to speak, it's well up there, and it's very easy. I heard someone talking about some pretty convincing emails coming through when I was out here. People get really good at that stuff, and it's really easy to slip something through and make it look very believable, to the point where it's like, oh, I needed to at least check this to see if it is, and it's usually not. It's usually a bad thing to open, and training is important with that. Another common vector that's been used consistently is people just love to plug in USB drives that they find places. I don't know why, but they do. So it's usually a good idea to have those ports disabled just to kind of stop that factor. People take phone calls and ask information, try to rush someone through, or you do a little research on the company's website, learn a little bit about the staff structure, and now you can call in. You're going to get somebody. They don't want to be rude to you on the phone because it's a business, right? You don't want to be turning away potential customers, and so they can slowly just dig information out through this, what we call like a social engineering type attack, right? And again, that's our own good nature that gets us on that. We don't want to be rude to people. But it's kind of like I would tell my staff, I don't like volunteer. We don't volunteer information about ourselves or our staff. It's nobody's business where our staff is, right? And it's really easy. Oh, that person. Oh, they're not here right now. They're out of the office right now. Well, it's like, well, who is this person that you're talking to? Why is that their business, right? And that's just a little simple example, but they can use that kind of stuff to then, okay, this person's out. Maybe they call the next day. Oh, they're out at this time consistently. Okay, well now I can use that as a tool when I'm on the phone to sound knowledgeable about this person, which will then get me further in somewhere else. And it seems silly, but it happens all the time. With training programs, often realistic is good. There are some good tools out there for like training for phishing campaigns, so emails, stuff like that, and it'll report who opens them and clicks on them so that you can do additional training with them. It's really important, though, if you want to have a successful training program, that you're not penalizing a person who's doing this. I mean, maybe you might, if there's like a certain time frame, if they're doing it consistently, like let's say you did this 2 months in a row and every time this person's getting hit, maybe you might be like, hey, we need to talk about this. But think about the time frame over that you're looking at when you're doing your training for this, because again, it's really easy. There's plenty of stuff that comes across and through my email that'll make it through like spam filtering that I can look at that and be like, wow, this is really good. I'm questioning this and I have experience with this. I have the advantage of I have some tools where I can sandbox that stuff and open it up and make sure that it's nothing. And that's not necessarily something everyone's going to have. So if I'm able to look at something and be on the fence about it with years of experience, it becomes a lot easier for people without those years of experience to get fooled by it. Policies. You need to have policies in place that define proper usage of your systems, and they need to be clear and concise, and they need to be updated. A policy is not a one and done thing. They need to be living documents, and they need to grow as you experience new issues and as technology changes. Because for me, one of the great things and also one of the bad things about technology is it's constantly evolving, and it's a moving target, and it moves at a rate faster than any one person can stay on top of. And then tying back to the frequency of the training, you need to do it often. Now that's going to depend on your staff, what you do. There is a balance always between disruption to your operations and the training frequency that you have. But it is a very important part of keeping your company secure. And then also, and this ties into policies, but what happens if you think you've been compromised? If the system you're on and you feel like something's going on with it, what would you do? Do you know what to do if you think your system is infected with something? Calling the right people is a good thing. But a lot of people might not know what to do. And it's important to have that specified and you have an incident response plan for when something happens. Because the earlier you can get in front of it, the better. You could have someone who's breached your network, a crypto virus is running its encrypting stuff. But if you can get ahead of it, you can segment that out. You can mitigate that. You can get those systems off your network so it doesn't spread. And that gives you time to, one, figure out what happened, then also keep it from spreading and shutting everything down. Okay. So there's a bunch of different terms to use for this. I just like this, probably coming from the military. But the gist of it is you have kind of 3 different categories that you can put information that your systems are receiving and that you're planning with into it. You have your historical data that that you have in your logs for your systems. You have your kind of short-term, you're detecting stuff, you have tools available that is analyzed. So the firewall, the IDS, the IPS, you'll have stuff like, depending on the system, but these are all available that you can use, that you can find off-the-shelf ones, you can find ones that are software as a service, so somebody else is running it for you, you can tie into it, your IT could have an in-house one. Something called like a SIEM, so it's a security information management, or excuse me, event management system, and that allows you to ingest all of these logs from your different systems and run reports against it to try to detect patterns like, oh, is someone actively trying to compromise my systems right now? It's coming from these spots, I can close this down. It gives you a way to look at the data, I'll say in a more human format. At the end of the day, it's doing what a person could do, but it's automating a lot of that. And so it's a very handy tool if you have it in the budget, and it's very beneficial. The tooling is always fun. So there are a lot of companies out there that'll offer services that will help with a lot of this stuff. And it's going to be polished and packaged. It'll be nice to use. It's not necessarily cheap. There are also, if you have your own in-house IT, there are tools that are not as polished and packaged, but coming from a development background, they're built like a developer would build something, so not necessarily intuitive UI. Think of like, I don't know, an old web page from 15 years ago or something. Very bare bones, does the job well, but not necessarily easy to use without some knowledge. Those kind of tools are available, and a lot of them are available open source free. Great thing about the security industry is a lot of that tooling people contribute and they put it out there free for people to use. It does require knowledge on how to use it.
Charles, I
Yes.
hate to cut us off. This is really good information, but I want to save some time at the end for Q&A with you and Pete.
Yes.
So,
Am I running over?
yes.
How much time do I got?
-2 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll just go here real fast. Okay. AI, it's happening. Air quotes AI. It's a double-edged sword. All the stuff that AI can do to help you protect you can also be used to harm you by bad actors. Layered defense is important. You need to layer all this stuff up. Policies, hardware, procedures, training, all that kind of stuff. And as I was talking about living documents, you need to constantly be looking at the landscape and improving the systems that you have and looking at trends on how these threats are happening so that you can get ahead of them so that you don't become a victim to them. We kind of just skipped down a little bit. And then any questions?
We'll come back to questions after Pete's presentation.
Okay.
But Charles, thank you so much.
Wow.
Okay. I know that was a lot. That was, it feels a little overwhelming to have to digest all of this in one day. Rest assured, this is a big topic, and this is not a one and done conversation. And we're going to bring Charles back up at the end for some more questions. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Pete Olson, Vice President of Property and Casualty at USI Insurance Services. Peter leads and collaborates with the USI team to design and develop a specific program, market existing coverages, and introduce new product solutions and integrate analytics, risk control, and claims advocacy for his clients. He is ultimately responsible for all service standards, communication, and implementation. Peter provides responsive and strategic advice designed to help companies safely manage risk at the lower net cost. And today he's here to talk to you about how to work with insurance companies around cybersecurity attacks. So Pete, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have to look back at my slides a whole bunch. That's kind of the agenda here, but most of what I've got actually in here just kind of reinforces everything Charles talked about. So here's your global risks, and this is why you have a strong IT program, and this is why you buy cyber insurance, right? All the other things don't match the frequency by which you're getting hit with cyber incidents as a business, right? And we all experience this every day. Like, how many times does somebody almost trip and fall coming into your property as a business owner versus how many phishing emails do you get a day? And multiply that by every employee, right? And you can see why this is, and it's also the most lucrative for the criminals right now. They don't even have to be in this country, right? They can hit you from anywhere at any time. And a lot of these folks sit in large offices where they punch the clock, they have retirement plans, and they just hack into your place. So like, this is most frequent, and I'll get to the end, but honestly, for most of us small business operators here, it is incredibly cheap and commoditized to buy the insurance product, right? Now, there are a lot of different types and things that we'll talk about more here on the cyber that you can buy and what that means and what specifically you're purchasing, but we'll get to that. Down. Dovetailing on what the threat is, and you can see the average ransomware payment is $380,000. That's a lot, right? That's going to be a huge hit to your bottom line if you have to pay it out of pocket. And median, lower. You can see every type of industry is getting hit. Obviously, like your financial institutions and your healthcare organizations, they've got your credit card data and your social security number and your healthcare data. That's a reflection on some level of our laws and regulations being weaponized against us, right? Because if you compromise somebody's healthcare data, not only like are the employees or the patients coming after you, but the regulators are saying this is associated with a fine, a penalty, rehabilitation costs. Yeah, anybody? Do you have personally identifiable information? Let's go through here. Healthcare information. Do you manage a network? Do you accept credit cards, right? All of these things. That last one I think is pretty important because a lot of us are using Square or other third-party vendors to process the transaction. Look through your contract with that third-party vendor. The responsibility for that data is yours. Square, if they lose your client's information, it's on you, right? Luckily, the cyber insurance market is here for patching that, right? So it's not going to be your information, but they are pushing all of the risk contractually onto you guys, and your ability to go back and good luck calling Visa and getting them to pay for that, right? So you can see these are just a survey of what everybody was concerned about in the landscape across the country. Data breaches being the biggest one, cyber attacks, critical infrastructures, malware and ransomware, and then the cloud. But this is just a recent survey of what people are worried about. It's a good snapshot. I don't think it's entirely reflective of what the analytics actually suss out. This is what we've seen so far in the year. We've got big phishing attacks, ransomware, a lot of stuff. Hyper technical, right? We see these. These are all different ways of getting into your system, and everybody looks scared.
Yeah.
I hate this. This is my favorite part about my job. But the easy thing is, like, honestly, like, cyber insurance has become very standardized, very commoditized, and pretty cheap, especially if you put in the very basic internet security controls, right? So yeah, here's all the tools that the bad guys have at their disposal, right? That they can top eight. These are the biggest eight that we've seen in 2024, and they're coming at you from all ends, right? And they're more often than not state funded, quite frankly. So Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, like, these are state sponsored, international. Got some cybersecurity here 101. I think I'm gonna brush over this because this is what Charlie talked about quite a bit already. So I do want to hit a few things though. Yeah, so this is really what underwriters are looking at when they consider you as an insurable risk, right? And how much they're going to charge you for that insurance. Third-party risk management process, right? That's your people. That's your vendors coming on site. That's what's your contract look like, right? Do you actually have some indemnification with Visa or Square when you're taking credit card transactions? When you're moving healthcare information across your network, how secure is it? Whose responsibility is it? Who's the first responder in these situations? MFA, multi-factor authentication, this is a full-on gating issue for getting insurance anymore. When we sent everybody home in 2020 without multi-factor authentication and their own devices, right? The insurance industry lost their shorts. Like it was a bloodbath of cyber attacks. And they said, look at in 2021, we're not playing around anymore. You have to have multi-factor authentication. And it's a pain in the butt. You're like, oh, I'm trying to log in and now I find my phone. Is it over there to log on, right? But that's the new reality, right? This is as simple as locking your door anymore, right? You got to have 2 sets of keys. The rest are other things that they're looking at. Let's see. These are additional things like biometric stuff is highly valuable now if you're working in that space and you have any of that. That's sort of a new thing. And AI, again, try to mention, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of cool right now. What we're seeing is that, and maybe I'm wrong at this point, it changes so quickly, but the bad guys kind of had it first, and now we have it, right? And so we're always racing to be ahead of the attackers and the criminals. And so far, so good. We've gotten to a point where most employees, most organizations can recognize sort of that something that might be fake. They've had the training, but you've got to keep it up and you've got to notice. And it's so ubiquitous, right? We see it on our Gmail, we see it on our text messages that you know when you're in your workplace, what to expect, what to look for, how to hover over the website and see if it's real. An example of some social business email fraud here. I'm going to get to, these are legal and administrative best practices. Again, train, and more train. You can't have enough of this. Nice thing about training employees, you can leverage your insurance broker and your insurance company to provide those for you, right? Like you're already paying for the insurance. Do the additional add-on and say, hey, do you guys have any video things that we can do as often as monthly, quite frankly, right? And they'll even take it so far as to do that, the fake emails that you get, where you go, oh, you just won $1,000, and you get 6 employees that clicked on it on accident instead of reporting it to IT or deleting it. And you're like, hey, you guys really need to pay more attention to the modules that we've been pushing out. All these other stuff, you can see like this is just a big undertaking. And one of the things that we want to try and do is target your approach, because nobody has time for all of this. Even like the best internal IT, like you've only got limited bandwidth, right? And if you're starting from 0, where do I start? This is a laundry list of stuff, and what's the dirtiest is important. And we as the insurance industry hope to provide that for you. That's not important. Okay, so insurance coverage, right? What am I buying when I get? You're getting really 3 parts of it: privacy or third-party coverage, first-party coverage, and then there's some additional coverage, right? So the third-party, that's things associated with my organization that if it goes down, either they're going to sue me and I have to repay them, or I have to. Actually, typically they're going to sue me and I have to repay them. I'm liable for damages caused to other parties. Privacy, network security, media liability here. First party coverage is my loss to me. The big one, actually, I think that a lot of people don't see is this digital asset data reconstruction. Most of this stuff is going to be pretty standard in your cyber policy, except for this one, right? This one it is annoying because it's actually hard to prove, right? You've got to have a lot of time for your CFO, your controllers, your VP of finance, and your IT people to go, oh, just keep all the damn receipts and how much money were we losing beforehand and how much was that set of data servers worth, right? And that time piece, getting reimbursed for that can be difficult, and the insurance companies, they don't like to give this away for free. So having a good broker who can negotiate that in is important. And then compliance, right? If HIPAA comes back and CMS comes back and says, hey, you lost 50,000 medical records, this is just fine. Like, you are immediately liable. And oh, by the way, you have to send mailers out to everybody. Anybody gotten those mailers? Says, yeah, sign up for those, right? Those are great. You probably have, like, at this point, any of us have 20 personal reimbursement things available to us because, you know, Chevron lost our information, or Jackson's, and I hear that, lost our info. Like, it happens. Yeah. So maybe the insurance broker lost your information, but these are readily available, and that should be part of your coverage costs, right? Is all that mailing costs to send out to other, and there's a ton of third-party organizations out there that do it. So but all these coverages, because it's an unregulated line of insurance, they're only as good as a broker can negotiate. Now, for smaller businesses, again, this is becoming a lot more standardized and commoditized. But when you're getting your renewal proposal or your first proposal for insurance, it's going to have all this weird language. What is that? What is that? What is this? What is this coverage? What does this actually do for me? What's the financial implication of doing it? If I negotiate it out, do I get a better price? Like, all of these things they matter, but you should be able to get to a point where you can get all of sort of the bells and whistles associated with a cyber policy at a reasonable cost anymore. So here's a bunch of other interesting ones that I like. This cryptojacking is pretty cool. They hack into your servers and your IoT, and they're using your computer capacity to mine Bitcoin, right? And then reputational loss. This is interesting. Again, this is a hard one to prove, but I think it's important, right? Particularly if you are a client-facing organization whose name brand means a lot, and that's your IP or your value proposition. You're really going to want to look at how do I get out in front of this, right? Because if this is on the newspaper day one, right, do I have the opportunity to spin it? Additionally, some of that can come with PR firm coverage. And not PR firm, legal liability coverage. So like that first phone call you make, phone call. I like phone calls, because if you're emailing IT, whose fault is this? Before you know it, you can admit liability both to the regulators and to the community at large, right? And you've admitted liability, and you're facing all kinds of torts. Oh, and by the way, when you admit liability without the insurance company's ability to identify the source and whether or not you're liable, that may be cause for denial. Not typically, but understanding that sort of like that factor and what happens afterwards is important. So that's just like, it's the phone call. And in advance, who am I calling, right? Like, I would consider myself like a part of your triage team as a broker. Like, pick up the phone. Oh, your system is down. Oh, they want $2 million. Okay. And we have local FBI here, by the way, and they will happily take your call, work on the keys, see if they have the keys, see if they know who the actor is, to help with this, right? Like that this is like one of their number one frequency things that they're working on right now. So what else have we got? Oh, where are we at?
Got a couple more minutes.
Okay. You can kind of see what happens after an incident, and we're still in the scary part. When do I get to the good part? So you're gonna show up one morning and you're gonna go, huh, this is down. Nothing's opening. Oh shoot, what happened? Right. How do I log in? How do I get my business open? How do I open the doors? How do I sell some stuff? can't do it. Oh, it says somebody has locked me up and they want it. So that's the first step for forensic and investigation and legal review. Again, there's a lot of law firms here nationally and locally that specialize this, that are on retainer by the large insurance companies that are trained, and they're doing this day in, day out. So like this is bolted into your cyber liability policy, this response, right? So you're gonna have your IT on the horn, you're gonna have your CTO if you have one, or definitely VP of finance, whomever the stakeholders are, to identify how much was lost, what the probability is. And, you know, if you've got the opportunity to sort of review your cyber renewal and do a tabletop exercise, I highly recommend it, right? Because the biggest part of that is, who are the people involved when I get hacked? Where are they? How do I respond, right? And then where's the cold storage that I back up every week or every night? And is this a nothing that I can just kind of move on to this other piece, or is this mission critical, right? Some of this happens, and you don't really need everybody on your team losing their minds and losing their hair. If you've got the insurance in place and you've got multiple sort of backups, this stuff is, and that's why if you saw that slide earlier, it says we're down 5% year over year, and 4 years ago we were up 100% in premium costs to businesses for cyber. It was just, but we have, honestly, as I stand here today, we have come so far as like a country almost in our cyber hygiene, right? Everybody knows what the threats look like, how to deal with them, and most businesses are far better procurers of insurance than they ever have been. I promised I was going to get to one more thing. Go back here. Okay. That's it. This is more of what we were talking about already, but like, these are the things that they're going to underwrite to, right? Do you have endpoint detection? I already said MFA. What are your crown jewels, and do you have backup data? But it's gating right now is endpoint detection, VPN, and multi-factor authentication. If you don't have those things, insurance is going to be 2, 3, 4, 10 times as expensive or unavailable to you if you have critical infrastructure or healthcare or credit card data. It's going to be hard. And then, but it's pretty easy. Those are like the basics. And after that, it's just industry and revenue that they're underwriting to. So that's my spiel. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Charles, I'm going to have you come up and join Pete in the hot seat here. About 10 minutes for Q&A. Okay.
There's so much to cover, but that's.
All right, I'm going to open it up for questions. I've got some of my own too, but I want to make sure we've got time. Yes, Rob.
Charlie, you mentioned open source security software.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when you're downloading a security software, you're not introducing a new threat all by itself?
You really don't, per se. There's an aspect of the reputation of the software, but even then, with open source, people can be contributing to it. And there was actually, a couple months ago, a really big potential problem that got caught by a Microsoft employee just because something was a couple milliseconds slow on something he was doing. And he traced it back to a backdoor, basically, that was put into a key piece of software. And this guy had been working on it for years, and then finally introduced it, and it got caught immediately, luckily, but it could have went undetected. So there's always that risk.
The source of your software is an underwriting component. They want to know what software you're using, and open source. If you are in the a sensitive industry, it's going to be more expensive or unavailable to you. So reputation matters when procuring insurance.
So let's say someone didn't come to this workshop and they don't have insurance and they don't have an IT department, who should their first call be if something happens?
If something happens,
Something happens.
When?
Try not to scare.
I think the point is to scare people.
I mean, from my perspective, it would be reaching out to someone like in my industry or Eric's industry, because at that point, if you don't have insurance and you don't have IT,
Yeah.
you need someone to come in and
Straight to mitigation.
figure out what's going on and get them back up. They might not even be able to fix what's there. They might just have to stand something new up and then have time to look at what's going on. So
Call in the tech experts.
So as a follow-up to that, what if we leave here and say, okay, I gotta get my act together? What would you suggest as the first next step? Do we call both an IT managed service provider and say, help us do an assessment? Insurance provider, help us do an assessment, pretty sure we're not up to, the requirements or the eligibility, or we just don't know, it might be three-quarters of the way through. What's the path to getting current?
so we work hand in glove with IT departments and their third-party
Okay.
vendors. You may, honestly, like turning on MFA is, like I said, that's the gating thing, but every software system that you have, you just go on, all employees, sorry, you gotta use your text now. And then making it, improving the CSCS.
I mean, again, both is the answer.
Yeah, it's a two-pronged strategy.
Yeah, with our highest security managed service package that we do, I mean, it's pretty much a requirement that you have cyber insurance with that. It's just, that's another thing that you just need to have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
And-
what he's doing is gonna take a lot more time. The transaction side is quick. Once you say, I've got these on, I don't have this, it's a quick turn to actually get a quote.
Weren't you guys doing an assessment as well?
We can do assessment, usually that's for larger organizations. The industry does have several carriers that do soft scans, where they'll ping your system and identify some things, and that's part of the brokering process. You don't wanna have that done if you're in the early stages, because then you will get automatic denials from half the market, and you're in this stage where, when a week later, if you turn the stuff on, now, the market is available to you.
So get the assessment, fix the risks, then call you.
and from my side, we'll get assessments constantly from different insurance providers, being like, how are these things done? And then we'll just fill out that information. Here's the systems we have in place. There might even be some type of gap assessment, like, yeah, this is a deficiency. It's already been identified. Here's the plan to fix it. And that usually goes a really long way if there's something that's going to take a little while to implement. So you don't necessarily have to drop everything and do it, but you do have to identify it and have a plan to fix it.
Tammy?
Well, this might be a dumb question, but I have a healthcare company and we work with a lot of large insurance and pharmacy companies. And so the expense to my company is just raised in the amount of encrypted emails I have to look at every day. Is there like an alternative? I mean, I got every email, you used to be able to open an email, reply, and it's done. And now you have to go through all of this process just to open one email. And then if they respond right away, you have to do it again and again. And it's raised the time it takes to communicate.
Unfortunately, with the way email works, by itself, it's not encrypted. And so when you're using encrypted email, you're actually logging into some other system where that information is encrypted. It's just sending you an email saying, hey, there's information to look at. Then you go to this other system where you can look at it encrypted. But short of some stuff that's not very intuitive, the email protocol that's there, it's a really old protocol.
Atrocious.
It's
So is there
stable.
anything coming up in the future that will resolve that? Okay.
I don't think so.
So tapping into your large healthcare systems and being sort of like a part of your system is something that a lot of sort of what you would typically consider as an ancillary vendor, but you are part of it. And Epic is really at the cutting edge of all of this. While they take all of our money, they're working really hard to help with folks like you.
And I want to recognize that we have a couple of folks in the room who work in the cybersecurity space. If you want to chime in, please do so. Andrea?
Softballs.
Sorry.
I guess more theoretical, but maybe more towards Pete, but as a fellow insurance nerd, I was reading an industry article about AI and insurance and how, I guess, forecasting, how that's going to impact different lines of coverage and riders or not. And it wasn't what the article was saying, and I'm interested if you agree or not. The article was saying more that they're not going to add additional riders or coverages for cyber insurance. They're just because it's just the frequency of attacks that will change, not necessarily the methods. So what is your take on that?
It's a crystal ball question, right? All of these BS coverages over here, like they should have sat in our general liability years ago, and it was just like, hey, this is anything having to do with computers, it's covered. But instead, our industry and its genius said, no, cyber insurance, we're going to create this whole ecosystem around it. And I'm up here talking to you guys about this thing. And so what'll probably happen is some large insurance carrier like an AIG will get hit with an artificial intelligence hack of some sort. And they'll try and call it something different than any of their coverages that they're already providing, and therefore deny it. And it'll work. And then they'll roll it out to all of their underwriters and say, you now have a sublimit of AI. That's likely what I would happen, but we're doing a good enough job here, I think, that hopefully not, right? I think we've kind of gotten to a commoditized stationary level for a while.
Well, and I would say, to speak to that, what you were picking up on, at least what I hear in that, is the frequency versus the vectors changing, is because of AI, it's a lot easier for little script kiddies that really, until now, have had no experience with cybercrime. Now anybody can pretty much plug and play, tell the AI, this is what I need. They recently did one of the security firms recently did a thing where all they ran was the description of a CVE. In other words, a currently viable exploit, right? Of the top 100 CVEs, and AI was able to create the exploit just from the description for 81 of them. So if I have no experience at all, I can tell the AI to create an exploit for 81 of the top 100 exploits currently in the wild, and fire that off. So that's what they're talking about, is you don't even need any experience to do it anymore. And so the frequency is going to skyrocket. But the exploits themselves aren't actually changing.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
So speaking of AI, as small business owners, are we better off using it or not using it? I mean, like, in what capacity is it beneficial and then not using it?
I mean, from my perspective, AI is, one, it's not going away, and it's a case-by-case basis. There's still some unknowns around the legality of the content that it creates and how that can play into whether you own it or not. But at the end of the day, this isn't a perfect analogy, but I kind of liken stuff like ChatGPT and things like that to a written version of a calculator in a way, like something that can empower you to, but it's not, you still need to know the fundamentals. So.
I wouldn't use it for your cybersecurity.
All right, just in closing, tell us one happy thing.
Insurance costs are down 5%.
This is counter to my nature. Happy thing.
Dig deep, Charles.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I guess
breezy. I can help.
I was gonna say there's a wide want for people to learn more and do better with cybersecurity, so that we catch this stuff earlier and it doesn't happen as often. So. Thanks.
Yes, there are companies out there to help you with your cybersecurity protection, or cyber hygiene, as I will now refer to it. All right, thank you guys so much for being here today, and okay, thank you again to our sponsors and to USI for providing the lunch today. A couple of upcoming programs for the Chamber that we hope to see you guys at. Next week is a busy Chamber week. On Tuesday, we've got part 1 of our summer roundtable series, which is called The Life Cycle of a Pothole. Avril Watt, our board chair and GM of Aztec, is going to be here. She's going to talk about their organization and what they do and how they build rock crushing equipment, workforce challenges and opportunities, supply chain, regulatory environment, lots of stuff going on in her company. And then next month, we're going to take a field trip out to Riverbend Materials and see how they use that equipment to make asphalt right on the roads. And then in August, we're going to be back here and examining that from the public infrastructure side. So hope to see you next Tuesday. We're going to go walk over to Mill Street and see a pothole. Next Wednesday, we've got our business after hours at Bring Recycling. That's co-hosted by Bring and Belfour. Belfour is another one of our Small Business Solutions Hub investors, so we're excited to have them participating in this. And then next Thursday, do we have any Leadership Eugene Springfield graduates in the room? Okay, applications are now open for the next class, which starts in October, but applications close in July. Next Thursday, we're doing an info session over at Public House up in the Attic Bar. We're inviting alumni to come and talk to prospective applicants about the program and your experience. So hope to see you there, whether or not you're interested in the program or you've been through the program. And with that, I will adjourn our meeting today. Thank you again for being here.
Awesome.